Okay, I want to set up a Windows file server via Samba on an Ubuntu 64-bit server that I'm setting up. So again, probably the first thing I want to do is get Samba. So sudo apt-get install Samba. We'll go out there and grab the Samba package and set it up. Okay, now Pegasus has Samba installed. Next thing I want to do is I'm going to open up a prompt and gk sudo, and I like to use the gedit text editor. So I want to go to the etc folder and Samba and smb.conf. And in Samba.conf there's a few things that we need to change. First off, look for a work group, and since one of our servers is named Galactica and the other server is named Pegasus, we're going to call our work group Battlestars. The other thing I want to do is turn on user authentication security, and so I'm just going to uncomment this line here. Okay, and then the next thing I want to do is set up my shares. So I have this down to a low resolution so I can get, so hopefully it'll be big enough to see, but because of that it's hard to scroll. So let me kind of move this around. There we go. Alright, so I want to come down here and just be careful because the syntax of these config files can be very picky. But in this case I want to call this very first share public, and the comment will be public files shared on the Battlestar, Pegasus. On the Battlestar Pegasus, which is this server's name. And the path is going to be public. And guessed OK. And this means that users will not have to authenticate. Since I'm setting that to be OK, they can just browse the folder without having to have any type of authentication account. Not very secure, but for just public domain type things that you want everyone to be able to access, it's a useful setting or a feature. Browsable, yes, they will be able to browse the folder. Read only, yes, definitely. If I'm going to enable guest access, I certainly want to make it read only, not just via the Samba, but also via the POSIX permissions. And the create mask, you can do what you like. The standard is 0600 and 0700, but it doesn't work like UMax. Like how UMask is sort of it's sort of the inverse of chmod, but in this case it's actually the permissions that you would want to add. And it's read only, and I mean, it's kind of redundant. I don't even need to include this. I could just comment it out or not include it at all. But I guess just for the purpose of illustration. And then the directory mask on directory permissions. And again, it's read only, so it's kind of redundant to do that, not really necessary. But that would be my first share. And then check your syntax, make sure it's good, and then from that point on you can pretty much copy and paste each new share because the syntax is going to be about the same. But make sure that the path and the name is different. And just as an example, I'm going to make a read only ext4. Alright, we'll call it that. And for the purpose of simplicity, I'm going to make the folder the same name. Now this path is important. It's going to have to match up exactly. So if I make this at the root position, then that's where I would need to make it. Now, by default, you would always make things that, in server. Most services should be, at least according to FHS standards, should be in the SRV directory. But just to show you that you can put it in root or anywhere, I'm going to go ahead and put these in root. Now this is read only, so it's going to, guest access yes, browsable yes, read only yes, and I'm going to keep the same mask. I'm going to change the comment And I'll change the comment here. Read-only shares on Pegasus. Okay. And keep the mask the same. And I'm going to copy and paste. And I'm going to say writable. And read, write, share on Pegasus. I'm going to get rid of the S there in the comment tag. Doesn't really matter. But okay, and since I've modified the share name, I don't have to. I mean, I could call it banana, but this is important. I wouldn't want to map that to the same folder. So I'm going to make these match, and when I create the directories, it's going to have to match the path. Now in this case, for guest access, I'm going to leave it as going to leave this as yes and browsable yes, and this would be very insecure, but I'm going to set read only to be no, and I will modify the mask. Again, not necessary, but just to show you that particular configuration setting. And that'll do it for our ext4 examples. Now I want to do NTFS. Well, actually, let me delete that, and let's go and take a look at these first. So to make these directories, what I would use is the command sudo mkdir, or alternately you could open up Nautilus with root privileges. Write yourself a small script to do that or something, but they need to match exactly, right, the paths here. So public, I wouldn't want to call it banana and then tell Samba that it's public there, so I need to do that. And read only, ext4, and I just called that arrad only. Read only. And again, be very careful and pay attention to detail when you're doing this, because this is where you may have problems if things don't match up. Writable. It's case sensitive. ext4. Then you would know. And sudo, let me just get rid of erad. Butterfingers tonight. It is a directory. Use with the recursive option. Or you could use remove directory, okay? And I just want to verify. Okay, so make sure the directory names are the same. All caps, read-ext4, checks out in the path. All caps, public, and public, checks out in the path. And writable ext4, all caps, writable ext4, all caps. So all of that checks out. And now, this is the share permissions. So across the network via Samba, these are the POSIX permissions locally on the local file system. Just like in Windows and Active Directory. You know how in Active Directory and Windows, share permissions combine with the access control entries on a discretionary access control list, or the security tab? Well, you have the same thing in Linux. So that is the Samba, or share network permissions, combined with the POSIX, or local file system permissions. So they need to match up as well. In other words, if I have